A few years ago, I reviewed a game called Never Alone, a deeply personal platformer that explored the history and culture of the Inupiaq people in Alaska. While the platforming wasn't all that deep and the puzzles could have been a little better, I was moved by the way it introduced me to struggles I had never considered. At first glance, Ao, a rain tale, looks a lot like Never Alone. It's another side-scrolling puzzler starring a young girl going on an emotional journey just to stay alive. But don't go in expecting to learn about the culture and history of the Sub-Saharan African people, because this brand new PC game only takes us part of the way. Water is one of those things I've always taken for granted. There's never been a day in my life where I didn't have the option to run to the faucet or grab a hose or just buy a bottle of water. But for millions of people around the world, water is a constant struggle. That's the case with Ao, a young woman who's feeling the harsh effects of the Sahelian droughts and has the burden of making the long trip to the well to gather up water for her family. What Ao wasn't anticipating was just how treacherous this trek was going to be. She gets stuck in a sudden sandstorm, which ultimately ends with her falling down into a cavern and getting lost. This sends her on a journey where she'll face her fears and discover the magical world of Africa. And I'm not even talking about the continent's gorgeous vistas, but actual magical creatures that fly around and teach our hero new abilities. This is, for the most part, a fairly straightforward 2D platformer. It's the type where you'll occasionally have to dodge enemies and jump on crumbling platforms. Over time, you'll gain the ability to push giant boulders, dig into tight tunnels, and, of course, double jump to hard-to-reach areas. You'll also find that a lot of the puzzles revolve around switching between yellow and blue platforms, something you'll initially do with organic switches before earning the ability to do it at will. Ao's journey will take her through all kinds of beautiful hand-drawn locations. I was initially left cold by some of the art choices, but some of the locations and backgrounds are truly stunning. And even though the game is barely 2 hours long, it still feels like we go on an epic journey. Part of this is because we end up covering a lot of ground. From the murky swamp, to the lava caves, to the dying forest, the game does a good job of throwing new areas at us. There are even a couple of cool looking boss fights. For as much as I like the setting and theme, I wish the game would have leaned more into the real history and struggles. One of the things I really liked about Never Alone was how it introduced us to real people and didn't shy away from discussions about the tribe's culture, heritage, and legacy. That's the reason the game has stuck with me for 3 years. There was an opportunity to do that here, but Ao, a rain tale, doesn't take that concept all the way. I was left with a lot more questions than answers. As a side-scrolling platformer, Ao is okay. Her handling isn't as precise as you might expect, and the game is never very difficult. I also wish the puzzles were a little more complicated. The developers introduced some interesting ideas, but they only scraped the surface of what could have been done. If you're anything like me and grew up playing old 8 and 16-bit games, then you'll have no problem beating this without dying more than a handful of times. It's pretty easy. Although it's light on story and details, Ao's journey is compelling, and I like that it sheds light on a struggle that many of us never even think about. That said, the emotional punch would have hit harder if they had given us a better understanding of the people and the culture of Sub-Saharan Africa. Ao, a rain tale, has an intriguing premise that would have been a lot better with a little more context. Hey, thanks for watching our review. So here's the question of the day. What is your favorite location you've been introduced to in a video game? It can be real or fake, just as long as it's in a game. There's so many to choose from. I like the world of Disney's DuckTales, since literally every bush in that game is hiding a rare diamond. Also, Wipeout is probably the only racing game I can think of where I want to explore the surrounding locations. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. We've been a little light on content this week, but that's because we're prepping for the rest of the year. We're about to announce a huge daily series starting on the 23rd, so I recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.